You think you can save her? Marcus's voice dripped with venom, his fingers tightening around Ellie's wrist as she struggled against the ropes. You have no idea who you're up against, Cole. This isn't just about me. Nathan stood frozen in the dimly lit warehouse, blood roaring in his ears. His fists clenched, ready to fight, but then Marcus smirked, his next word sending ice down Nathan's spine. You're chasing shadows, grease monkey. The real threat? He's been watching all along. Nathan's breath hitched. Before he could react, a gunshot shattered the silence. Who was Marcus working for? And why did they want Ellie silenced? Find out in the full story. The rain battered Willow Creek like a vengeful fist, turning the dirt roads to sludge and cloaking the town in a gray shroud. Nathan Cole locked the rusted door of his mechanic shop, the Cole's Auto Repair sign creaking in the wind. His calloused hands, streaked with grease, wiped absently on his worn overalls as he climbed into his pickup truck. The engine sputtered to life, headlights piercing the drizzle as he drove toward the lone gas station on the edge of town. It was past 10, far too late for a single father to be out, but Lucas, his 6-year-old son, had asked for milk with those big, pleading eyes, and Nathan couldn't say no. The station's neon sign buzzed and flickered, casting a sickly green glow over a scene that stopped Nathan cold. 3 bikers, clad in dripping leather, towered over a small figure pinned against the cinder block wall. A girl no more than 10, her blonde hair matted with rain, stared up at them with terror etched into her pale face. The biggest of the trio, a scarred brute with a lip twisted like a knife wound, barked something lost to the storm's howl. Nathan didn't hesitate. He was out of the truck in seconds, boots slamming into puddles, his voice a thunderclap of its own. Hey, leave her alone. The bikers turned, their eyes glinting with menace. Scar Lip stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. Mind your own, grease monkey. Nathan's fists balled at his sides. He wasn't a fighter, not since the fire that stole his old life, but 5 years as a firefighter had carved resilience into his bones. I said back off. Scar Lip swung, a meaty fist cutting through the rain. Nathan ducked, years of instinct flaring, and drove a punch into the biker's gut. The man doubled over, then hit the mud with a wet thud. The other 2 froze, exchanged a glance, then hauled their friend up and peeled out on their bikes, engines roaring into the night. Nathan knelt beside the girl, his voice softening despite the adrenaline pounding in his veins. You okay, kid? She nodded, trembling, her small hands clutching a phone like a lifeline. Who are you? Sophie, she whispered, barely audible over the rain. I need my mom. Before he could ask more, headlights sliced through the downpour. A sleek black SUV screeched to a stop, and a woman emerged, tall, poised, her gray suit pristine despite the chaos. Her sharp eyes locked onto Sophie, who bolted into her arms with a cry of mom. The woman's gaze shifted to Nathan, softening just enough to hint at gratitude. Thank you, she said, her voice low and steady. I'm Ellie Sinclair. Ellie. Nathan Cole, he replied, brushing water from his face. Just glad she's safe. Ellie's lips curved faintly, but a shadow lingered in her expression. Something guarded, something heavy. She pressed a business card into his hand, the embossed Sinclair Enterprises stark against the damp paper. If you ever need anything, she said, then guided Sophie into the SUV and vanished into the storm. Nathan stood there, rain soaking through his clothes, staring at the card. He didn't know it yet, but that moment had tethered him to a web of danger and destiny. Nathan's life was a quiet rhythm. Fix cars, cook dinner for Lucas, and dodge the memories that crept in at night. 5 years ago, a warehouse fire had ended his firefighting days. His wife, Sarah, trapped inside, her screams echoing in his dreams. The scars on his hands were nothing compared to the guilt that gnawed at his soul. Willow Creek was his sanctuary, a place to raise Lucas away from the chaos of his past. But that night at the gas station had cracked the stillness. Ellie Sinclair lived in a different universe, one of glass skyscrapers and boardroom battles. As CEO of Sinclair Enterprises, she'd clawed her way up from nothing, building a logistics empire that stretched across the state. But power came with shackles. Her ex-husband, Marcus Hensley, was a predator in Armani, a man who thrived on control, his wealth built on shadows and threats. Their divorce had been a brutal war, and though Ellie had won custody of Sophie, Marcus wielded a quieter weapon: fear. He'd vowed to ruin her, to take Sophie, if she ever stepped out of line. That night, Sophie had slipped away to a friend's house, gotten lost in a storm, a slip Marcus would pounce on if he knew. Days later, Ellie appeared at Nathan's shop, her polished heels clicking against the oil-stained concrete. "I wanted to thank you properly," she said, sliding an envelope across his workbench. Inside was a check, 5 figures, a sum that could fix his truck, pay off debts, and more. Nathan slid it back. "I didn't do it for money." Her eyes narrowed, appraising him. "Most people would take it." "I'm not most people." That defiance piqued her interest. Over coffee at the diner, they talked about Sophie's love of drawing, Lucas's obsession with toy trucks, the weight of raising kids alone. Ellie's walls cracked, revealing a warmth beneath her steel exterior. Nathan felt a pull, her strength, her quiet resilience mirroring his own. But when he asked about Sophie's father, her face shuddered. "He's complicated," she said, voice tight, and changed the subject. Their bond grew in stolen fragments: a picnic by the creek with the kids, a late-night talk on Nathan's porch where Ellie confessed Marcus's threats, how he'd once locked her in their mansion for defying him, how he'd whispered promises of taking Sophie if she ever loved again. Nathan shared his own ghosts, the fire, the moment he'd failed Sarah, the guilt that kept him awake. Under a sky ablaze with stars, he kissed her, tentative at first, then fierce, a silent vow to protect what they'd found. But Marcus was a spider, his web tightening. Those bikers hadn't been random thugs, they were his hired eyes, tracking Sophie to keep Ellie caged. When he learned of Nathan, his fury erupted. One night, Nathan returned to his shop to find chaos: tires slashed, windows shattered, tools strewn across the floor. A note in jagged red ink lay on his workbench: "Stay away from her." Ellie's panic was immediate. "He'll hurt you," she said, tears streaking her face as they stood in the wreckage. "He'll hurt Lucas. I can't let him win again." "I'm not scared of him," Nathan growled, his jaw set. "You should be. He's a monster." She pulled away, retreating to shield her daughter. Nathan let her go, respecting her fear, until a week later, when Sophie stumbled to his door, her cheek bruised, her voice a broken sob. "He took Mom. He said it's my fault for running that night." Nathan's heart iced over. He dialed Jake Torres, his firefighting brother-in-arms turned private investigator. "I need you, Jake. This guy's a psycho." Jake dug deep, unearthing a bombshell. Marcus wasn't just a vengeful ex. He ran a money-laundering ring, funneling millions through shell companies disguised as shipping firms. The bikers were his enforcers, protecting drop points across the county. But the real gut punch was the betrayal. Victor Reese, Ellie's CFO and oldest friend, was Marcus's inside man, feeding him intel on her every move. Nathan tracked Ellie to an abandoned warehouse by the old mill, the air thick with mildew and menace. He slipped inside, shadows swallowing his footsteps, and found her tied to a chair, Marcus pacing with a gun. "You think you can escape me?" Marcus sneered, his voice dripping venom. "I own you, Ellie. Always will." "Not anymore," Nathan said, stepping into the dim light. Jake's dossier clutched in his hand, bank records, audio of Marcus barking orders, proof of his crimes. Marcus laughed, raising the gun. "Paper won't stop a bullet." A shot rang out, but it wasn't Marcus's. Victor stood in the doorway, pistol trembling in his hands. "I'm done," he rasped. "You threatened my sister, my niece. It ends here." The twist: Victor's betrayal wasn't greed, it was coercion. Marcus holding his family hostage. Now he turned. Marcus roared, lunging at Victor, but Nathan tackled him, slamming him into the concrete. The fight was brutal: fists, blood, desperation, until sirens wailed outside. Jake had called the cops, and they swarmed in, cuffing Marcus as he spat curses. Ellie was shaken, her wrists raw from the ropes, but free. She confronted Victor the next day in her office, her voice cold. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I was terrified," he admitted, head bowed. He had photos, my niece at school. "I thought I could protect you both." She fired him, but spared him jail, a mercy he didn't deserve. Nathan became a rock, helping her rebuild Sinclair Enterprises with new allies. But a nagging thread lingered. Jake found whispers of a bigger player, a silent partner Marcus answered to, a name lost in the chaos. It haunted Nathan, a shadow unvanquished. Months later, autumn painted Willow Creek in gold and crimson. By the creek, as Lucas and Sophie raced through the leaves, Nathan dropped to one knee before Ellie. "I don't have much," he said, a simple silver ring glinting in his scarred hand. "But I've got love, enough for all of us. Marry me?" Her smile was a sunrise. Yes. Their wedding was small, intimate. Lucas beaming as ring bearer, Sophie scattering petals with glee. Willow Creek buzzed with their tale. The mechanic and the CEO forged in fire and defiance. Marcus faced trial, his empire dust, his threats caged. That night on their porch, Nathan and Ellie watched the kids chase fireflies, their hands entwined. "We're safe," Ellie whispered. "For now," Nathan said, his eyes on the horizon. Marcus was gone, but the shadow of his unseen partner lingered, a promise of battles yet to come. Still, they'd built something unbreakable, a family born from shadows, now radiant in light.